That evening wasn't supposed to mean anything. I was just coming home early, that's all. My last meeting had been cancelled, and traffic was unusually light. It was one of those crisp fall afternoons where the sunlight is already fading by 4:30, and the sky takes on that soft gray blue before slipping into dusk. I didn't plan anything special. I didn't expect anything. I just thought, why not bring her something nice? It's funny how ordinary moments sometimes carry the weight of everything that follows. I stopped at the little corner bakery on Monroe, the one that's tucked between the pet store and the dry cleaner. The smell of yeast and butter hit me the second I walked in. I grabbed a loaf of that crusty olive bread she always said reminded her of Italy, even though we've never actually been. The lady at the register asked if I wanted it sliced, and I said no. I liked the idea of breaking it apart by hand. Felt more personal somehow. Then I headed to the wine shop 2 blocks down. I stood there for a minute, trying to remember which Pinot she preferred, the Willamette Valley one with the pine label. She always said it was smooth but not boring. I bought it, along with some cheese, the sharp kind she used to slice too thick, pretending she was being generous when really, she just didn't want to deal with the cheese knife. It was supposed to be a quiet night in. No big gestures. Just a little surprise to show I was thinking about her. But when I reached our building and climbed the stairs, I noticed our door was unlocked. That stopped me. I remember thinking maybe she forgot to close it all the way. She's done that before when she's in a rush. Still, I slowed my pace and pushed the door open gently, careful not to make too much noise. The moment I stepped into the hallway, I heard it. Laughter. A man's laugh. Deep, relaxed, confident. I froze. It was coming from the kitchen. I took a step forward, my heart knocking against my ribs. Not quite panic. Not yet, but definitely something sharp and sudden. The hallway stretched like it had gotten longer, like I was walking into something I didn't fully understand. I stopped just short of the archway that separates the living room from the kitchen. That's when I saw her. She was standing by the counter wearing my t-shirt. Not one of hers. Mine. The faded gray one with the little hole at the hem. The one she always said smelled like me and made her feel safe. Her hair was pulled up into a messy bun. Not styled, not made up, just casual. Comfortable. Like she was winding down from the day. She had a wine glass in her hand. She was barefoot. The man was sitting at our table. My seat, actually. Leaning forward, his elbow resting casually against the wood. He was tall, probably mid-30s, with that effortless, confident kind of presence. He wore a dark sweater, sleeves pushed up, and he was laughing at something she just said. She laughed too, and then, like it was the most natural thing in the world, she reached for his hand. And he didn't pull away. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I just stood there in the hallway, every part of me trying to make sense of what I was seeing. My mind started offering up possible explanations, scrambling to rationalize it. Maybe he's a coworker. Maybe something broke and he's helping. Maybe I'm reading too much into this. And then, like a punchline to the world's cruelest joke, my phone buzzed. A text from her. I'll be home in 10 minutes, smiling face with smiling eyes. I stared at the message for a while, not moving, not even breathing. My eyes went back to the kitchen. She hadn't noticed me yet. Neither had he. They were still in their little bubble. The candle lit on the table, the open bottle of wine, the soft jazz playing low in the background. I read the text again. I'll be home in 10. But she was already here, and I was already watching her. The blood in my ears started to roar. Not rage, not yet, but something colder. A kind of detached clarity. It's hard to explain. Like the moment before a storm hits and everything gets too quiet. Too still. I could have walked out right then. Could have slammed the door or made a scene. But I didn't. I walked in. Deliberately. Slowly. She saw me first. Her whole body tensed, like someone had flipped a switch. Her hand dropped the wine glass to the counter, and she blinked at me like she wasn't sure I was real, like she couldn't quite reconcile my presence with the moment she was caught in. "Oh," she said, her voice an octave too high. "You're home early." The guy turned around, clearly not expecting company. He stood, polite, but unsure of what he was supposed to do with his hands. I didn't say anything at first. I just set the paper bag on the counter, the bread, the cheese, the wine. Meeting got canceled, I said finally. Thought I'd surprise you. She laughed short, nervous. Yeah, well, surprise. I looked at the man. He cleared his throat. I'm Brian. I live upstairs. The sink was leaking, and she asked me to take a look. She nodded quickly, like she was trying to make the story match. Yeah, it started leaking right before dinner. I didn't want to bother you at work, so I knocked on Brian's door. Just trying to help? Brian added, with a smile that felt too rehearsed. I glanced at the sink. Dry. Then back at the wine bottle. Opened. Half gone. 2 glasses. The candle between them flickered like it was mocking me. I didn't say anything. And then, as if on cue, her phone buzzed again. It was still on the counter. Still open to the message thread. She moved quickly, too quickly, and flipped the screen down. I looked at her. I texted you, she said. The 10 minutes thing, I was just being silly. Like a joke. I thought it'd be funny. Funny? I repeated. Yeah, like, I wanted to mess with you. I didn't think you'd actually be here already. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'd seen that smile before, at dinner with her boss, when she was trying to be polite but wanted to be anywhere else. It was her performance smile. The one she used when she was lying. I nodded slowly. Brian looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. Well, I should probably get going. Let you two enjoy your evening. She didn't stop him, didn't thank him, just kept looking at me like she was waiting for a cue. The door closed behind him, and then it was just us. I walked over to the counter and picked up her wine glass. Smelled it. Pinot Noir. Not from our cabinet. I thought you liked the Oregon one, I said quietly. She shrugged. This was just what I had on hand. I turned to her. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her feet were bare. The hem of my t-shirt barely covered her thighs. She looked like home. But in that moment, she felt like a stranger. I didn't accuse her. Didn't yell. Didn't ask questions. Because the answers were already there, in the text, in the wine, in the silence. She looked down, suddenly finding interest in a crumb on the counter. I didn't mean for it to look weird, she said. I didn't think you'd be here this early. I nodded again. Because what else could I do? I couldn't argue with someone who was rewriting reality in real time. I couldn't ask for honesty from someone who was still figuring out which version of the truth to feed me. I just stood there, quiet, present. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't let myself admit until now. I didn't believe a single word she said anymore. Not one. It didn't hit me all at once. That's the strange part. I didn't storm out of the kitchen or tear the place apart demanding answers. Instead, something quieter happened, a kind of mental rewiring. Like a lens clicking into place. I began to see differently. The moment after that night, after Brian left, after her shaky explanation, something changed in me. I went to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the floor for what felt like an hour. She came in later, acted like nothing had happened, made tea, got into bed, rolled away from me, and I just laid there, eyes open, piecing together every memory I'd ignored before. The first one that came to me? A walk, a few weeks back, late Sunday night. She said she needed fresh air, just wanted to clear her head. I offered to go with her, and she said no. You've had a long day, babe, just relax. She came back 45 minutes later, cheeks flushed, hair windblown, smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. When I asked, she laughed. Said she'd passed a group of guys walking dogs, and they must have worn too much. I remember thinking, even then, it was a weird answer. But I let it go. I wanted to let it go, because I trusted her. Because it was easier. Another one came back to me next. Her phone. It used to live on the kitchen counter, unlocked. She didn't care if I saw her texts, and I never looked. Why would I? There was no reason to. We weren't the kind of couple that played games. Or at least I thought we weren't. But that changed somewhere along the way. Started small. She began keeping her phone face down. Then it was always on silent. Then it started following her to the bathroom, to the laundry room, even to the balcony. I asked her about it once, joked about how attached she was to that thing. She brushed it off, said she just didn't want work stress following her everywhere. But it wasn't just work calls anymore. One morning, she forgot to lock it. I didn't go snooping. I didn't even mean to look. But I saw a text flash across the screen as she left it on the sink while brushing her teeth. Last night was perfect. Still thinking about you. No name, just a number. She caught me glancing at the screen and made a show of laughing it off. Ugh. Hannah's being dramatic again. She met some guy at a wedding and thinks he's the one. Then she locked her phone and tossed it into her bag. Felt rehearsed. Too quick. Like she'd practiced the excuse. But again, I let it go. Then there was the towel. That memory hit me next. The night I got home late from work, and she had already showered. There was a towel on the rack that wasn't ours. Not from any set we owned. Dark gray. Faintly striped. It also smelled like something unfamiliar. Men's deodorant. The kind I used to wear in college, musky, not floral. I remember holding it for a second, trying to place the scent. When I asked her, she didn't even look up from her book. Oh, I bought some new body wash. I think it's Eunice *X. I checked the shower the next morning. Nothing new. Just her usual lilac stuff. I started keeping quiet. Watching. Logging things in my head like I was collecting evidence for a case I didn't want to build. A week after the kitchen incident, she came home in running shoes and leggings. Hair in a ponytail, a little sweat on her forehead. She said she went for a jog. I nodded, but something caught my eye. She was wearing a sports bra I'd never seen before. New, lacy, under a zip-up jacket. Not really jog attire. More like gym flirtation attire. I asked her how far she ran. She said just a mile, nothing big. But she didn't know I'd checked her fitness tracker once before. Synced it to our shared health app. She hadn't logged a single step. That night, when I hugged her, she flinched, pulled away, said she was gross and needed to shower. I waited until she disappeared into the bathroom, then stared at the spot she had been standing in, trying to remember when she stopped kissing me first. I don't know exactly when she started deleting her messages, but I noticed it the night she left her laptop open. I clicked open iMessage, just to send myself a photo we had taken. But the threads? Empty. Even her family ones. She never deleted those before. I asked casually a few days later if her mom was still traveling, and she paused, like she was checking her memory for what she had told me last. Oh yeah. She extended the trip another week. That was weird too. Her mom hates traveling. By now, I wasn't even trying to catch her anymore. I was just observing the slow collapse of something I used to believe in. The int * Macy faded in small ways. She stopped touching my arm when she passed behind me. No more random forehead kisses. No more texts in the middle of the day saying, "Thinking of you." Instead, I got calendar invites. "Can you grab groceries Thursday?" Or, "Don't forget, dinner with your sister Saturday." Transactional. Sterile. She started going to bed earlier, then waking up earlier, always brushing me off when I tried to pull her in for a cuddle. "I'm too hot. I'm just tired. Not in the mood." We used to fall asleep talking. Now, the silence filled the space between us like fog. I even started making excuses for her in my own head. Maybe she's stressed. Maybe she's depressed. Maybe she's pulling away because I've been distant too. I ran the loop over and over, always trying to find a version of the story where she wasn't doing what I knew deep down she was doing. But the more I searched, the more the little pieces came together. The wine I never bought but kept disappearing. The groceries that didn't match the receipts. The short trips to the store that took 2 hours. The hair tie I found under the couch, not hers. Blonde. Thin. She has thick dark hair. The credit card charge from a florist downtown on a Tuesday. Not for me. I hadn't gotten flowers from her in over a year. All of it started to collect like dust in the corners of my mind. But what really got me, what really nailed it, was how good she got at pretending. She could lie while chopping vegetables, while asking about my day, while tucking her legs under her on the couch and saying, "You should pick the movie tonight." She smiled more during those weeks than she had in months, because she thought I didn't know. because she thought she was getting away with it. And maybe for a while she was, but memory has a way of catching up. And once you see the first crack, you start noticing how everything leaks. I didn't confront her. Not then. Not even when she forgot to wear her ring twice in 1 week. Swollen fingers, she said. It's the weather. I just started writing things down. Dates, times, receipts, behavior. I wasn't building a case for her. I was building one for myself because part of me still hoped I was wrong. But hope is just denial with better lighting. And every time she told me she loved me with that same half-smile and distant look, I felt it more clearly than ever. She wasn't here anymore. Not really. She had left in small, quiet ways. And I was the only one still pretending we were in the same place. It was a Friday, the kind of day that drags with a quiet hum of routine. Emails, meetings, that usual pre-weekend energy where no one really wants to start anything serious. I had just finished lunch when she texted. Corporate dinner tonight. Don't wait up. Might run late, red heart. That used to mean something. A little note. A small gesture. But now every emoji felt like a cover-up. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, thumb hovering above the keyboard. I thought about asking which restaurant. I thought about replying, sounds fun, with a fake smiley face. Instead, I just locked my phone and stared out the window. Something about the message felt too polished. Not just the wording, but the timing. She'd mentioned this dinner only once earlier in the week, casually, like an afterthought. And yet today, she was dressed by 4:30, perfume lingering through the whole apartment. I noticed the red dress right away. She hadn't worn it in over a year. It was the one I bought her for an awards dinner back when she was still in marketing. Back when we still dressed up for each other. She'd tucked it away in the back of the closet months ago, said it was too much, and didn't fit right anymore. But it fit just fine now. I stood there in the hallway, watching from the corner as she checked her reflection in the mirror. She dabbed a bit more lipstick on, smiled to herself. Not a wide grin, just something subtle, private. I wasn't meant to see that smile. And I think that's when I really knew. The lie wasn't just in the events or the stories anymore. It was in the way she looked at herself, like she was stepping into someone else's life, one I wasn't part of. She left around 6:15. I waited exactly 10 minutes, then got in my car. I had no plan. I didn't know the venue, didn't know who she was meeting, but I remembered her saying offhandedly that the dinner would be somewhere near downtown, and something about that phrasing stuck with me. I drove to the cluster of hotels and upscale restaurants where those kinds of events were usually held. Just to see. Just in case. I parked 2 blocks from the Bellcrest. A place I remembered because we'd gone there once for a wedding after-party. It had a rooftop lounge, tall glass walls, soft lighting. Not the kind of place you accidentally end up in. I walked through the lobby like I belonged there, loosened my collar, and took the elevator to the 2nd floor. The lounge wasn't crowded, but enough people were moving around to let me blend in. I stood near the railing, away from the bar, letting my eyes adjust to the dim light and warm glow of string bulbs draped across the ceiling. And then I saw her. She was standing near a table by the window, holding a wine glass, laughing at something a man said. The man was Brian. Same guy from our kitchen. Only this time, his hand wasn't resting on the table. It was on her lower back. His fingers traced slow, familiar lines over the fabric of that red dress. She leaned into him, not enough to be obscene, but enough to be int asterisk mate. She looked comfortable, relaxed, like she was exactly where she wanted to be. My whole body went cold. And then, as if the universe couldn't resist pressing the knife deeper, someone walked by them and said something I didn't catch. I watched her face. She smiled, then shook her head slightly. I read her lips, clear as day. My husband's out of town. He's not into these kinds of events. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just stood there, gripping the railing so tightly that I thought the metal might give under my hands. I felt the edge of my keys digging into my palm, still clenched in my pocket. I could hear the music, soft jazz. A saxophone looped through some lounge track. People laughing, waiters moving, champagne glasses clinking. The world didn't stop, but everything inside me did. I kept watching her. The way she tilted her head when he leaned in. The way she touched his arm like it was second nature. And the way he looked at her. Not like someone sneaking around, not like someone having an affair. No, he looked at her like she was his. I backed away slowly, careful not to make a sound. I didn't need to see more. I didn't need to hear the rest. Whatever hope had been clinging to the corners of my heart, the rationalizations, the self-doubt, the bargaining, it crumbled right there in that room. She had lied. Not just in words, in posture, in presence, in the version of herself she gave to him. She hadn't even hesitated to erase me from the story. He doesn't like these kinds of events. Like I was just a footnote in her biography. I walked out through the lobby, past the concierge who nodded politely, past a couple taking selfies by the fountain. I got in my car, sat behind the wheel, and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked tired, older, like I had aged a year in the last hour. I opened my hand. A small crescent-shaped cut glared red in my palm, where the edge of my key had broken the skin. I didn't feel it, didn't feel anything. I drove. Nowhere in particular. Just away. Away from her. Away from that room. Away from the version of myself that still believed we could fix this. I passed familiar streets, stoplights, places we used to go. The Vietnamese place on 3rd. The movie theater where we'd seen our first film as a couple. Even the gas station where we'd once had a dumb fight over whether to fill up before a trip or after. It all felt like a museum of our past. Preserved. Fictional. Dead. I didn't cry. Not yet. Not then. I just drove until the city lights thinned and the road got darker. Pulled off at a rest stop. Sat in the quiet. Watched a few trucks roll past. And I thought about how well she had crafted it all. The storylines. The coordination. The way she maintained just enough affection at home to keep suspicion at bay. The timing of her walks. The staged tiredness. The random gifts to throw me off the trail. She had built a parallel life. And she was better at pretending than I ever imagined. I didn't call her. Didn't text. Didn't want to hear whatever version of the truth she'd offer tonight. She'd come home with tired eyes, maybe a headache excuse. She'd brush her teeth, slip into bed, curl away from me like always. And I'd lie there, listening to her breathe, like I hadn't seen what I saw. But I had, and I couldn't unsee it. After I saw them together, something inside me turned off or maybe on. I'm still not sure. What I do know is that I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't drink. I didn't spiral. I studied her. I studied them. And I began to build. That weekend I didn't say a word. Not about the hotel. Not about what I saw. Not about what I knew. I went through the motions like any other weekend. We had dinner. She made pasta and asked about my work week. I listened to her tell a story about a coworker. I even laughed at the right times. I watched her carefully. She wasn't nervous. She didn't stumble or fidget or flinch. Because she thought I still didn't know. That was her mistake. She didn't realize silence can be strategy. I waited until she left for a yoga class Sunday morning. One I now knew she didn't always attend, and then I logged into our smart home system. It wasn't complicated. I'd set it up myself 2 years ago. Smart lock, motion sensors, hallway camera, thermostat control, light schedules, and a few discreetly placed security feeds. We'd installed them after a break-in next door. She called them paranoid tech back then. Now they were something else. I pulled up the entry logs first. The system recorded every door opening, every code entered, every manual override. On the surface, nothing looked unusual. But then I looked closer. On a random Wednesday, one where she said she was staying over at a coworker's place after late drinks, I saw it. Front door opened at 12:48 a.m. Not with her code. Manual unlock. I clicked the hallway camera footage. It buffered. Then played. There he was. Brian. Standing at our front door, holding a wine bottle and a bag of takeout. He looked casual. Like he'd been there before. Like he belonged. A moment later, she appeared. Wearing leggings and a loose hoodie. Barefoot. She opened the door, smiled, said something I couldn't hear, and stepped aside to let him in. They didn't hug. They didn't kiss. But they also didn't look awkward. She led him down the hallway, past the living room toward the bedroom. I watched as the bedroom light turned on at 12:54 a.m. The camera didn't show the inside. I'd never installed one there. Felt like a line I didn't want to cross. Back then, anyway. But what mattered had already happened. He didn't leave until 8:27 a.m. the next morning. The footage showed him walking out, stretching his arms like he'd just had a good night's sleep, keys in hand, same wine bottle now empty under his arm. She didn't walk him out. She didn't even peek through the door. I named the file entry_1248_wed and saved it to a private folder called Documents, buried under spreadsheets and client PDFs in my work drive. I didn't stop there. I went back through the logs week by week, looking for similar patterns. Over the course of 2 months, there were 6 late-night entries with no code. Every time, the same pattern: manual unlock, after midnight, no corresponding code exit, meaning she never left, meaning she was already home when he arrived. And every time, the bedroom light flicked on within 5 to 10 minutes. They were careful, but not careful enough. One night, she told me she was out of town for a training seminar. I had wished her good luck, even sent her flowers to the hotel she claimed she'd be staying in. She texted back, "You're the sweetest. Got the flowers. Miss you already, red heart." But the logs told a different story. That night, our door was unlocked at 11:09 p.m. Manual entry. No code. The hallway camera didn't show him that time, just her. She had come home, alone. But what caught my attention wasn't her entry. It was the time the lights turned on in the guest bedroom, 2 minutes later. The guest bedroom we never used. That camera, I'd forgotten I installed one there. It was aimed at the window for break-in detection. But in the corner you could just make out the bed. And 2 sets of legs. One male, one female, moving. I paused the frame and stared at it for a long time. Then I exhaled. Clicked, download. Named it guestroom_1109_training trip. MP4. The camera system had facial recognition, a feature I never activated before. But now I did. I trained it on the images I had. I tagged her. I tagged him. And within 20 minutes, it pulled up every instance they'd been seen together inside the house. The results were worse than I expected. 9 visits, 2 daytime, 7 overnight, and in between, little things. The fridge camera showed them laughing while opening a bottle of sparkling water. She used her fingers to pop it, something she always asked me to do. He opened a drawer and grabbed a spoon without asking, like he knew where everything was. He sat on the couch with her legs draped over his lap. He took a call in our home office. I watched it all. I studied it, frame by frame, not because I enjoyed the pain, but because I needed clarity. Because for the first time in weeks, I wasn't lost in confusion. I wasn't drowning in what-ifs. I was standing on solid ground, holding facts. She was cheating, regularly, comfortably, *mately, and she thought I was still in the dark. The next time she told me she was grabbing drinks with coworkers, I nodded, smiled, kissed her on the cheek, then opened my laptop and archived 3 more files. The next time she told me she was crashing at Kelly's place because she didn't want to drive after 2 glasses of wine, I sent a friendly thumbs-up emoji, then marked another camera entry in my spreadsheet. I created a digital timeline, mapped it by date, excuse, log entry, and video reference. I color-coded it by visit type. Green, daytime. Yellow, emergency visit. Red, overnight. Soon I had a pattern, an entire rhythm of their affair mapped across 2 months. She wasn't spontaneous. She was strategic. She knew when I'd be out, when I'd be distracted, when my calendar was full. She'd started syncing with my schedule better than I had. That hurt more than I expected. She had learned how to navigate me like an obstacle course. And she'd done it with a kind of quiet precision I didn't think she was capable of. I documented everything. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. There was a moment, sitting alone in the living room, when I nearly broke. She had just gone to bed after one of her long days. I watched her retreat down the hallway, saw her pass the same spot where Brian once stood, and for a split second, I felt everything crash over me. The weight of it, the lie of it, the woman I shared a life with building something entirely separate behind my back. But instead of crying, I opened the laptop. I updated the log. I renamed the latest footage. I added it to the archive, because I wasn't waiting to be blindsided anymore. I was done hoping, done guessing. Now, I was watching, and soon I'd be ready. The thing about betrayal is once you accept it, you stop reacting. You start planning. I didn't rage. I didn't scream into the void or confront her with shaky hands and a folder of evidence. That would have given her power, turned me into the unhinged one, the emotional mess. No, I let her keep thinking I was blind. I let her play the part of the loving wife. I even let her complain about the stress of work and the loneliness of being in a relationship with someone who was always busy. And while she rehearsed her excuses, I was preparing the exit she never saw coming. It started with documents. I went to my office and pulled out the black file box from the bottom drawer, the one she always thought was just old business receipts and tax folders. Inside were the original partnership agreements, trust papers, vehicle lease contracts, and her signed waiver from the company. A year ago, she'd said she didn't want the stress of being involved in my business. Said she'd rather just support me from the sidelines. I'd offered to list her as a silent partner anyway, a symbolic title, PR manager. That made her smile. It gave her something to say when people asked what she did. I help run our company, she used to say, beaming. The truth? She had zero legal ownership. Her signature was right there, notarized, confirming she waived any financial stake. No dividends, no equity, no rights. It had been her choice. She didn't want to be tied up in boring contracts. I flipped through the trust agreement next. The house, our dream home. She'd picked the wallpaper, the furniture, the curtains. She chose the plants on the porch, the mugs in the kitchen. She told everyone it was our first big investment together. Except it wasn't. The house was bought by a trust. A private one set up before we were married. It held the deed, the taxes, the maintenance contracts, everything. She wasn't a co-owner. She wasn't even listed. I flipped to the next folder, vehicle lease. She loved that car. The matte black SUV with the tan leather seats. Said it made her feel like a grown-up. She told friends it was our car. A reward for building something together. But the lease? Filed under my company. Registered as a business expense. I remembered the day we picked it up. She took selfies with it. Tagged me. Wrote, "When your husband believes in you, you start believing in yourself." The irony didn't hit me until now. Belief is dangerous when it's not mutual. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the wall. For a long time, I'd thought love was about generosity. About sharing what you built. About giving someone a piece of your world. But she hadn't earned it. She'd only occupied it. She liked how it looked on Instagram. The lifestyle. The story. She used words like partnership and teamwork. But what she really wanted was spotlight without substance. Now, she had no claim. Not to the house. Not to the car. Not to the company. Not to the money. She had curated a life that looked shared. And in doing so, forgot to build anything of her own. She posed in front of success and mistook it for ownership. I closed the folder and moved to the laptop. Opened a blank spreadsheet. Title: Separation Prep. I started listing assets line by line. Which accounts were in my name. Which were protected. Which had backup documentation. I made copies of everything physical and digital. Scanned them to an encrypted drive. Set up remote access to a private cloud folder. Then I started a second tab. Exposure risk. Joint purchases. Shared bills. Utility accounts. Insurance policies. Subscriptions. Everything she had access to. Everything I needed to lock down. Not because I wanted to punish her. Because I wanted a clean break. I reached out to my attorney. Not the firm we both used, but a separate one I'd consulted a year ago when I started sensing something off. I'd asked, hypothetically, how to protect my assets in the event of marital complications. Now it wasn't hypothetical. We scheduled a meeting. In the meantime, I made small moves. Canceled her company email access, said we were restructuring. Removed her from the Zoom account, budget cuts. Closed the corporate card she had for travel expenses. She didn't ask questions. Or maybe she did, just not out loud. Maybe she thought the walls were closing in from coincidence. Or maybe she was too distracted to notice. That's what affairs do. They make people careless. They convince them they're invincible. That no one's watching. That consequences are optional. But they aren't. One afternoon, while she was out, I pulled up her laptop. She had it open on the dining table, sloppy, for someone hiding a second life. The screen was unlocked. Her mail app was open. I clicked through. No new messages from him. But a draft sat in the trash folder. Not deleted, just half forgotten. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. He's been distant, yes, but he's still kind. Still trying. I feel like a monster, but also, I don't want to stop. I read it twice. Then closed it. Didn't **T it. Didn't save it. I didn't need to. That line would stay in my head forever. He's still kind. Even while she was lying. Even while she was cheating. She had the nerve to acknowledge I hadn't failed her. And then kept doing it anyway. That was the moment I stopped feeling sad. I felt sharp. Clear. Like the fog had finally lifted. There was no more guilt. No more confusion. No more wondering if I'd pushed her away or failed to notice her slipping. She made choices. Calculated ones. And now? So would I. I called my bank. Removed her as an authorized user. Then canceled her autopay setup. I pulled my name off the streaming services. Canceled joint delivery accounts. Moved my Amazon logins to a new email. Changed my phone's facial recognition. Small things, but they added up. One morning, she texted me while I was in the garage. Hey, did you change the password to the Netflix? I waited 5 minutes before replying. Yeah, thought we got hacked. Reset everything. She didn't reply. The next day, she asked if I wanted to plan something for our anniversary. Maybe a weekend trip? She suggested, walking into the kitchen in one of my shirts, holding a coffee mug like we were still us. I smiled, nodded, said I'd look into it. That night, I booked a solo trip for myself. Not to run, to think, to breathe, to get perspective. And when I returned, I'd be ready. She still had no idea. She thought I was worn down, maybe even a little pathetic. A man too distracted with work to notice what was happening in his own home. She didn't know that while she played house, I was resetting the foundation underneath her. Everything she believed was hers, the lifestyle, the stability, the image, it was borrowed, built on my work, my structure, my name. And now, the lease was up. She showed up with a new lawyer, hair done like it was a job interview. Her voice trembled when they mentioned fair division. Her attorney talked about equity, contributions, shared effort. My lawyer didn't flinch. He passed the judge a folder, signed waivers, trust documents, email receipts where she'd written, I don't want anything, I just want to support him. The judge skimmed, looked up once, then said, this isn't deception, it's structure. Her lawyer panicked, tried to pivot, but there was nothing to stand on. Even her social media backfired. Every post said, so proud of his success. Not ours, just his, mine. She texted, can we talk? I agreed. We met at the cafe where she once celebrated our journey. She wore the coat I gave her on our first anniversary. Like nostalgia could fix this. I want to get back what we had, she whispered. I slid a copy of our first company flyer across the table. She stared at it, confused, distant, like she barely recognized the world she once claimed as hers. She didn't fight the court's ruling, didn't beg. She finally understood. This was never hers to lose. It just looked that way.